Hi, I'm Margaret and welcome to Garden School. We are probably starting to plan our garden for next year, especially our vegetable garden. And as we're doing that, there's a couple questions we should be asking. The first question I think we should ask is, in our last season, what worked? What was really successful? And what did we really enjoy the fruits of our labor from our vegetable garden? There's another question that's just as important to ask, and that is, what didn't work? I think we can ask ourselves, we can try to remember those things even though we might not want to. Look back at your records and see what did you plant and what did you not get anything of, or what had terrible diseases or pest problems. That's an important question to ask. And there's a third question that we should ask, and that question is why? Why were those successes? And why were those failures bombs? Why did they crash and burn? Those are some three important questions that I think we should ask so that we can do a better job of our next season's garden and have more fun and more success with that. Well, I'm going to take you out in the garden a little bit and we'll talk about some of those things, some of those successes and some of those failures and the why. Perhaps we could figure out why. Okay?
Now, something that I did have a lot of success with was my green beans, my pole beans, and I decided I would plant them along this screening here by my little pond, and they did really well. I had a lot of beans, which was fun, and I think I'm going to do that again this next year. Another win for me was this little greenhouse that I got last year, and it really helped me by being able to start seeds earlier and to protect some tender things. And you can see this is January and I now have some nice lettuce that made it through our cold snow and icy time. And I'm going to continue with this. This was a good thing for me to try to do. I'm pretty happy with this and I will continue to use this again the next year. Now I drew a little map of my pea patch plot, my little 10 by 20 plot, to talk about the problem I had with my tomatoes. Now I have my dahlias in here, they're still in the ground, my cruciferous vegetables through the overwintering, my kale and my purple sprouting broccoli, those will be there for a couple more months. An artichoke, some garlic starting, a little asparagus bed. But I had planted my tomatoes right here. Now, sun comes up in the east and then sets in the west, but there's a big tree border down here. And my tomatoes got too much shade from the dahlias. They grew very tall. And my tomatoes didn't produce very much. Now, I think it was from too much shade, but also we had two very hot spells, one that was very early in the summer, and then one later in the summer that lasted for a little while. It was pretty uncharacteristic. And tomato pollen becomes very sticky when it's over like 80 degrees. And so pollination by insects or wind doesn't happen very much. So I'm kind of thinking that perhaps that influenced the production of tomatoes. Well, whether it was the shade or the hot weather, maybe it was a combination of both. But that was a little problem that I want to try and solve for the next year, or take some steps so that I get some better results. So I was thinking these really large containers that some shrubs came in, those would be a good thing to do for the tomatoes, and I could put them in a very sunny spot here at my home. That way they won't have to suffer from the shade of those dahlias. And maybe I can even find some more of these large containers. I would grow determinate varieties of tomatoes in these. I'm going to try that.
So there were a couple things that I was thinking about. My win from my pole beans that turned out so great, but then the thing that wasn't a win about the tomatoes. And I've determined what I'm going to do for both of those for this next year. Well, there's a lot of other things to think about, the wins and the losses in last year's vegetable garden and how to make adjustments for the next year. But I wanted to remind you that when you come up with those problems, you may need to do a little bit of research and find out, my potatoes just did not produce. What is the thing I need to change? Or, wow, my lettuces just produced and produced and produced. I got to remember what I did. What was my watering schedule? When did I start them? And just try and replicate those things. Now, of course, things change all the time. Our climate changes, our weather changes, our time availability will also change. Do your best, have fun, but once you've determined what changes you're going to make, go ahead and do it. And good luck to you. Best wishes with this next year's garden. Well, there's always more to learn in the garden. Bye-bye.